I'm Kai, a 19-year-old artist from the UK. Today I'll talk about basic structure for drawing heads. Rather than just talking about heads, I want to talk about the basic structure underneath the head that will make your drawings a lot better. I think there are already good videos of drawing heads, one by Antira Art and another by June. They're really good. First, I want to talk about skulls because this is what you'll be basing the whole structure of your faces on. It's not important for you to learn all the bones in the skull, but it is important for you to sort of learn the structure so that you can base your heads off of it and make it feel three-dimensional and feel natural too. As you can see here, my anatomy isn't perfect when it comes to the skull, but it's just enough for me to base my super basic manga form around that. As you can see here, I'm following the basic sort of form of the skull with the eyes here, and I'm doing the same with the bottom of the eye too. I'm also doing that with the basic form of the eyebrows here too, sort of wrapping it around the skull. I'm also following the basic form of the cheek bump here too, so when it protrudes it curls back in and goes straight into the chin. Something good to keep in mind because I think a lot of beginners struggle with the cheek bump. Your head's not to follow the full shape of the skull either. It's better to change it up to make sure it's visually appealing too. As you can see, I'm editing a few things around here, making it more manga/anime. Sort of when you're drawing manga and anime characters, drawing the cheek bump a certain way will make the character appear a lot more cute. Here I'm also showing sort of where the shading might go. And finishing up the sketch here too. Here I'll talk about the basic forms of the head. It is better to learn how to draw a skull to sort of use that as a building block for everything that you create, but learning the forms is more than enough to sort of get an idea of how to draw the heads. I do think studying the skull will help your heads look more appealing in general. I guess this is more of a simplified sort of anime manga sort of version of the head itself, rather than being super realistic. As you can see here, I'm sort of sectioning off the head because I typically put my eyes in the middle of the head itself, and this is a good anchor point to decide sort of where to put my features. Since you should be studying from a lot of manga reference, it helps to sort of put down some kind of guidelines so that you know where the eyes and everything is positioned on the head, and you'll be able to implement that into your own stuff a lot easier that way. You can sort of see where the eyes and features land, and then you can decide whether or not to implement that and use that in your own stuff. And this is one of the better ways to learn how to actually draw sort of a head. You've probably seen these forms before too on Loomis or any kind of head drawing method, and this does really help a lot when you're sort of defining your forms and where the lighting might go. It's especially useful for painters, but even us sort of manga anime artists can still use it. Even though this is a huge simplification of what sort of reality actually looks like, it's still helpful to keep these forms in mind here. And I'm sort of putting down some face features here too. As you can see, I'm not putting my eyes directly in the middle of the canvas either. I'm keeping it very loose and deciding as I go along what's the best for sort of the artwork itself. As you can see, I'm still following the basic rules of the skull there, such as the cheek bump or the bridge of the skull coming into the eye. Even the eyebrows wrapping around the head. And I'm showing off the forms of the nose here too. As you can see here, when I add the blush, it's actually to show the form that yellow part is sort of following. And this is how you might add in your blush, you might add in your lighting and things like that. It's important to keep in mind. And here I'll talk about how to actually study and improve it drawing heads. The best way I found is to basically break it down to super simple shapes. A circle or a square is a lot easier than sort of trying to draw the full thing. And you'll want to learn to turn these in any angle and make it still consistent. Even learning a lot of the more difficult angles is going to help you in drawing super simple angles like a front view or a 3/4 view. Doing your studies on this will be super helpful there when you do the difficult angles. So I do suggest it, even if it looks terrible, This is going to help you a lot in the long run. Probably 90% of the stuff artists draw they never show anyway, so. As you can see here, I'm doing a below shot of the head, and it's still really difficult for me to. And then I go into drawing other sort of angles and shots. You should be able to draw these super quickly and draw a lot of these every day, and then as you improve, you sort of add more things to it, and eventually you'll have the whole head drawn as a basic form. And you'll have the experience to be able to turn them in any angle and sort of make them work. And don't be afraid to experiment with the angles and things like that. The point of this specific practice is to put down as much as you can and learn as much as you can, and the best way to do that is to experiment a lot, like try a lot of different things, see what works for you, and see where you're making mistakes and try to correct them, ask other artists for advice, things like that. It can be super helpful. As you can see here, I'm doing another below angle too because the first one wasn't that good. Learning these kinds of things might take a week or it might take a month, it depends who you are. And here I'm showing what you might do after that, which is sort of implementing more of the chin this time and actually creating the full head. You can add more or less to these heads if you want to. There are a lot of different methods out there, so coming up with your own things is very helpful too. At the end of the day, what matters is sort of what works for you. But you want to be super consistent with how you draw these heads and how you study them. It's important to look out for your own mistakes and be able to come back and correct them when you can. If you make a mistake, figure out what you're doing wrong and try to revise it and make it better. And here I also wanted to show off sort of the basic forms of the eye. And since it's a literal eyeball, following that basic form is going to help you a lot when you're actually sort of drawing it, and it's going to make it a lot more three-dimensional too. Following the form with the shading and stuff too. In addition, you can also do this when you sort of draw different shapes for the eyes, like if you're drawing a Bakugo eye or a different character's eye. Some characters' eyes are more circular and others are more angular, but regardless of how you approach it, following the basic form is always going to make the eye a lot better. And last, I'll talk a little bit about drawing the actual hair, and the way to do this is just to select a point on the hair, and usually you're using a reference and there's a point where all the hair sort of stems from, and using that is really going to help you figure out how to actually draw the hair. You can also use sort of the hair to frame the head too. I think Mikey Mega suggests it too. And here I'll do one more example of a head, basically following the general origin point of the hair and using that as an anchor point to draw everything else. It's super simple this way. And since we're basically wrapped up here, I wanted to show a time lapse of a few of the faces that I've drawn. When you draw your basic structure and forms, you want them to be super quick. Maybe you can learn to draw them as quickly as 20 or 30 seconds. And then imagine how many you could draw in like 30 minutes if you have time at work or school or whatever. And this is really going to help you in general just improve that art. And it's not very hard. As long as you're using a lot of references, and I can't stress that enough, use a lot. And really try to sort of improve the heads themselves and draw them at different angles. And you're really going to learn a lot from these kinds of studies. And then after that, sort of learn to watch other people's videos and learn to put the faces onto those basic structures. The general idea is to always look for mistakes and find ways to improve them. There isn't really a length of time that you have to study these to get good. I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks focusing on each and you'll be pretty good then. But always come back and learn it again, stuff like that. If you like the video though, like and subscribe. I make videos every Monday or Tuesday. So yeah, see you next time.